This is an easy one. Oh, yes? Why? Welcome back to On Deadline, the Washington Examiner's political game show. I'm Christian Daytalk.
And I'm Jeremiah Poff.
Each episode, we bring you the week's biggest political stories, give our takes, and then at the end, you get to pick a winner. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell your friends about the show. This week, the first episode of 2025, we're starting Above the Fold. It's a segment where each of us gets to deliver the top story on their mind, and we try to poke a hole in the argument. Jeremiah, what's on your mind right now?
All is not merry and bright in MAGA world. Over Christmas, Vivek Ramaswamy, Elon Musk, the godfathers of the Doge project, elicited a firestorm on social media when they said they wanted to expand legal immigration through the H1B visa program. Of course, curtailing immigration has been a huge part of Trump's campaign, and also a huge part of Trump's base wants to see immigration, not just illegal immigration, but legal immigration cut as well. The H1B visa program is an immigration program that allows companies to bring in foreign labor, ostensibly because they are the most qualified and that they fill jobs that Americans otherwise wouldn't. And Trump has given a tacit endorsement to Vivek and Elon. But the truth about the H1B visa program is that most companies use it to undercut wages for jobs that Americans could easily do.
So Jeremiah, I kind of want to take a step back from the actual politics of H1B and talk about Elon Musk, because the way you just laid it out there, he's taking a stringent position against most of the MAGA base. So can you really be truthfully fighting for America First policies when you're doing something like this, but also, endorsing a party in Germany, AfD, floating, giving all this money to Reform Party in UK? What is Elon really trying to do here? And should MAGA voters feel like they're getting sold out by a billionaire oligarch?
Well, it does feel like Elon Musk is kind of becoming this new, I'm going to get involved in every political situation in the whole world because I'm also the richest person in the world.
Right.
And so my interest is in everything.
My interest is in how do I hire the cheapest workforce possible for me.
Right, but even still, I'm being a little harsh on him. He did point out that the H-1B visa program has been abused, and he wants to see it reformed so that it's more focused on high-skilled labor rather than the cheap labor that most companies use it for.
Okay, that's interesting and something I think we'll certainly keep our eyes on. And Trump has flip-flopped on a number of issues he campaigned on, right? You think back to when he launched his campaign and even his first term in office. Hated TikTok, was trying to ban it. Now he's trying to save it from the Joe Biden ban. This seems to be a symptom of Trump 2.0 maybe not being as dug in on his ideals as he was before.
I don't think Trump's ever been dug in on his ideals.
Fair.
That's kind of what makes him so effective as a politician. He's very pragmatic. He's going to take the moment and see what deal is available to be made, what progress can we make on this issue, even though this isn't the exact ideological position that certain people in his camp or other people in his camp may favor. And I think that's what makes him, the art of the deal. It's kind of the you can't have a rigid ideology going into these ideas, into these programs if you're looking to make a deal. So Christian, what's on your mind this week?
For years, we heard about how Joe Biden had absolutely nothing to do with his son Hunter's business dealings. Well, we've now got some photos surfaced through a Freedom of Information Act request that proves that line is just a bunch of malarkey. Back in 2013, Joe Biden, then the vice president, traveled to China where he met with Xi Jinping. We've heard about this, again, for years. And now these photos show Biden introducing Hunter not only to Xi, but to then Vice President Li Yanqiao, and Hunter introducing his dad to the partners at BHR. Of course, that's the infamous Chinese firm at the center of the investigations into Hunter's business dealings and tax fraud. Look, I don't want to relitigate the past, but Democrats need to take a stand and finally vote for candidates who stop lying to America and put the electorate's interests at heart. That's how we got into this position in the first place. Had there been a real primary, a real challenger to Joe Biden, I think Democratic voters would be singing a very different tune than they are post-Trump victory 2.0.
Of course, Christian, there was an attempted real primary challenge by Dean Phillips, and the party just kind of pushed him out. But You mentioned not really relitigating the past. Joe Biden seems pretty interested in doing that these days. There's that report going out that that he regrets getting out of the race and he thinks he would have won if he'd stayed in.
I mean, I look at this as Joe Biden either being delusional or lying to himself. Again, we need to get politicians who stop telling lies and be honest. Again, you take politics out of it. You look at Donald Trump in 2016, and you knew what he campaigned on. He didn't flip on all of these policies like he's doing right now, coming in ahead of 2025. But ultimately, the Tea Party, the Republican Party, had a similar situation back in 2012 that saw voters oust Eric Cantor, the House Republican chairman, and just sort of turn over this whole cadre of old boys club politicians who were telling voters one thing and then either legislating very differently or just flat out, being in government to protect their own interests, whether it was political power or business, down the line. Democrats, if they're serious and want to be a party for the people and try and help the working class, elect politicians who do what they say and stop selling lines to the American public.
It's time for our yays and nays, where we give our opinion on the news of the week. Sometimes we'll agree, but sometimes we won't.
Trump's cabinet nominations will stick to the plan and not make a splash on social media.
Part of me wants to say yes, but I think I'm going to ultimately say no. I think, for the record, people at home who don't know what this story is about, Susie Wiles, Trump's Ice Queen, as she's nicknamed, incoming White House Chief of Staff and former campaign co-manager, sent out a memo to all of the cabinet nominees saying, stay off social media ahead of the confirmation process. Seems simple, right? I think Wiles is sort of in an interesting place because she is the glue, really, that kept what historically has been a chaotic and backbiting group of political aides backing Donald Trump from doing any of that and, winning a second term in the office. That being said, you got people like Pete Hegseth or Kash Patel, who I know is new to Twitter/X, whatever the kids are calling it these days. These guys are firebrands, right? And I think part of their allure, especially in the wake of the horrible terror attack that we saw in New Orleans on New Year's Eve, they're going to want to get their takes off. And so given how important social media is, not only for Donald Trump, but for politics in general right now, I feel like it's going to be hard for a lot of these high-profile guys who, again, are used to firing off takes on Steve Bannon's podcasts or, whatever it might be. It's going to be hard for them to keep quiet ahead of the confirmation process. But I might be wrong. You certainly voted in the opposite direction.
I think at this point there's a level of professionalism in this transition operation that we didn't see in the last one.
That's a good point.
8 years ago. I also think that all of these cabinet picks, they may be firebrands online. They may like to stir the pot a little bit on cable news, but they also know what they signed up for and what they're trying to do here. I think they're gonna be just fine. I think they're gonna be quiet. They're gonna do what Susie asks them, and I think it's gonna work well in their confirmation process because after all, the goal here is to get Trump's people in place. And if you're creating distractions for the team, you're not being a team player. And I think that these guys will be team players.
I mean, to that point, and backing up your argument, you look at someone like Corey Lewandowski, who of course was there during Trump's first campaign. He was his original campaign manager before getting fired and has sort of been an unofficial advisor in the ensuing years. When he joined up with the 2024 campaign, he clashed with Susie Wiles and she got him canned and he's gone. So if you don't listen to Wiles, the ice queef gonna cometh for you, I guess.
Trump trusts his closest aides.
Joe Biden will match Jimmy Carter's legacy.
This is an easy one. Oh, yes? Why? Go on.
Jimmy Carter went through the four years as president in 1977 to 1981 and was immediately voted out by one of the largest electoral margins in U.S. history.
Go on.
He left office woefully unpopular amid massive inflation, crises abroad. Joe Biden is doing the exact same thing. He is leaving office woefully unpopular. He is leaving office with massive inflation, and he's leaving office with a whole bunch of crises abroad. Of course he's going to match Jimmy Carter. It's almost fitting that Jimmy Carter's first endorsement in his 1976 presidential campaign was from a senator was from Joe Biden himself.
Okay, all right. So I see what you're saying politically, but here's the thing: Jimmy Carter never should have been president, right? As a fellow Georgian, he was just a guy trying to help people out, but obviously not the most skilled political operator, especially when it came to foreign policy. But when Jimmy Carter left office in the 70s, he had a whole lifetime ahead of him to where he could do amazing humanitarian work. I volunteered with Habitat for Humanity, his nonprofit, all throughout high school. And it's not like this was a no-show job. He was out there building houses until he's 80 years old, 90 years old, basically the same age that Joe Biden is right now. The reason their legacy is going to be different is purely because of the fact that Joe Biden is so old, there is not going to be another chapter in his life. He doesn't go out and win a Nobel Peace Prize for going to Africa and giving food and water to needy people. There's nothing coming like that for Joe. Everyone's going to remember he pardoned his son on the way out, and he lost to a guy who was facing however many federal indictments. That's Joe Biden's legacy, not a humanitarian.
But if Joe Biden is so old he can't have much of a post-presidency, he can't have much of a failure of a post-presidency that Jimmy Carter did.
Oh, okay, here we go.
Jimmy Carter injected himself into every single foreign policy disaster that was going on in the years since he left office. He tried to inject himself in the Israel-Palestine conflict. He's had a rapprochement with China. All of these different things that we recognize now are massive foreign policy failures. Yes, he built some houses for homeless people.
Some houses, millions of houses.
He taught Sunday school, and I'm sure he was a nice grandfather. But come on, the guy did not actually leave a great legacy, even in his post-presidency.
Who do you think won? Did Jimmy Carter have a better legacy than Joe Biden will? Let us know in the comments. Now it's time to fill in the blank.
Authorities in New Orleans should have done blank for the Sugar Bowl.
This is tough. Obviously, after that terrible terror attack we referenced earlier, the Sugar Bowl, one of the college football playoff quarterfinal games between the Georgia Bulldogs and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. We've got a vested interest in this game. That was delayed by one day. I think that this was the right move. They should have certainly delayed the game because of the grieving people in the city, on top of the actual security concerns about potential actors who were still out there and potentially still able to carry out plans to harm attendees at the games or just people in New Orleans, what have you. I'm a little surprised they didn't delay the game longer. And obviously there's a lot of scheduling problems here. And, when you start talking about moving the game or delaying it, that's millions of dollars in lost revenue for the city of New Orleans. I think it was the right decision. It's unfortunate, obviously, that we're having to talk about this, but there's no way those kids could have played that game the following day.
I'm going to say that they should have played it.
Oh my God, typical Notre Dame. Go on.
But not because I understand definitely the reasons why that they delayed it. I think that there were definitely good reasons to want to delay it. But part of America is that we stand up to bullies. We stand up to people who want to do us harm, and we don't let them change the way that we live our lives. And I think that it would have sent a powerful message to the people that, some of which who may still be at large who were a part of this. I think it would have sent a powerful message if the game had still been played. And it would have said, no, you're not going to change our ways of life. You're not going to interfere with our the things that we love in America, in these times of tragedy.
Hit him with the George W. Bush golf course press conference move, basically.
I call upon all nations to do everything they can to stop these terrorist killers. Thank you. Now watch this drive.
On to our last segment where we talk about some of the lighter news that happened in the last few weeks.
So speaking of the college football playoff, I do want to give a little bit of a shout out to Ron DeSantis' son, who very embarrassingly was posted on social media ahead of the quarterfinal round, making his picks. I say embarrassing because it was his dad filming. I'm not knocking this kid at all. And he had pretty good picks.
Texas versus Arizona State.
You got Arizona State. You got Texas. Arizona State beat out Iowa State. It's enough. You are going with the Texas Longhorns.
Ohio State versus #1 undefeated Oregon Ducks?
You know what? Oregon sucks in the playoffs. I'm going with Ohio State.
Wow.
But listen, the important part of this is it's nice to see a side of Ron DeSantis just being a normal human being, right? And like interacting with his son in a very like dad way, not being out in public and licking his lips or eating pudding with his fingers. He should have done more of this on the campaign trail. I think America would have had a very different reaction to him, and we might have had a different Republican nominee. Who knows?
I was rather struck by Whitney Cummings
on
CNN,
New Year's Eve.
On CNN New Year's Eve with hanging out with Andy Cohen and Anderson Cooper and just roasting them to their face.
Thought being a mom would mean that less people will want to come see me. I'm now playing, like 3,000 seat theaters,
awesome.
which is about the viewership of CNN these days.
Well,
Not
nice.
this show, though.
Nice.
All eyes are on this show.
You must have been one of those 3,000 viewers on
Apparently,
Tuesday night.
Apparently, I was, because I looked at the cable news roster and it was like ABC, NBC, and CNN were the only ones carrying the ball drop for whatever reason. I don't know. Anyways, she also had fun things to say about Joe Biden.
It was amazing that the pro-choice party didn't give their voters one when it came to the presidential candidate. Kamala was forced on us so hard you'd think she was patented by Pfizer.
My favorite part about that clip is just her continuously being like, are we still going? Are we still on air? I haven't been fired yet? And Anderson Cooper's like, I might be, who knows?
Am I still streaming?
Yes!
This is amazing.
Well, Anderson and Andy were both 3 sheets to the wind in that whole conversation,
Yeah,
so
I
they might
know.
not even known what was being said.
It was tough. Andy Cohen actually made a funny point about a guy that I do want to bring up next. Eric Adams, dude, get out of every single photo op possible. He was there all over the New Year's Eve thing, and he's clearly vying for a pardon with incoming President Trump, but he's not the only Democratic mayor sort of trying to cozy up, and we've seen this with a number of liberals over the past 2 months. I mean, Joe Scarborough, Mika Brzezinski going down to Mar-a-Lago. We had this report that Muriel Bowser, the mayor of Washington, D.C., she went down to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Donald Trump about forcing federal workers to come back to work in the office, use some of this unused corporate real estate here in D.C., which has been vacant since COVID. It's an interesting turn, because if you remember back, again, Trump's first term in office, very different relationship with Muriel Bowser.
Right, but Eric Adams is by far my favorite person in all of politics.
You're a crazy person.
The guy just manages to get himself inject himself into every possible little thing that he can, and it's hilarious. Look, I'm not a fan of him personally in terms of his job as mayor, but as a source of entertainment, he is second to maybe only Trump.
That's true. The perp walk with Luigi Mangione might actually get Mangione off. People were so mad at Adams.
It was unbelievable. Like, why is he there? I got to show him that we don't stand for this kind of stuff in New York. Mayor, maybe you should ask Turkey how you stand about that.
There you go. That's all the time we've got for this week. Don't forget to let us know in the comments who you think won this week's Clash, and subscribe to make sure you get next week's episode right in your inbox. In the meantime, you can check out more of our great reporting at washingtonexaminer.com. I'm Christian Daytalk.
And I'm Jeremiah Poff.
And we'll see you next week.